Okay, so this video is going to cover 2.3 to 2.4 on the century plan and mixed economies. I'm going to fill the notes in, so and just kind of walk you through the info. All right, check it out. If you make this one too much bigger or smaller, it's a problem. But I think you can do the notes a little smaller. Not a problem. I'll go 90. I think that's plenty of room. Yeah, go with that. Pull it over just a skosh. Yeah, that's good right there. And then you can make this one pretty big. All right, the big questions you're going to see in this topics are: how are centrally planned economies organized? What problems exist within centrally planned economies? What is the role of government in mixed economies? What is free enterprise? And yeah, so by the time you're done here, you should know each and every answer. All right, let's look at the organization of centrally planned economies. Yeah, that's right. You should be filling in notes already. And I think as long as you go between the underlining, it's fine. When it's centrally planned, the government is controlling production, all the factors of production, land, labor, capital. They're in control of all of it. And so with that, they're also can control the three economic questions: what to produce, how much to produce, and how much to charge. Which countries are still operating under command economies to this day? Well, it's a spectrum, but I would generally say this map shows you pretty well. North Korea for sure, Cuba for sure. I think that's Turkmenistan. Myanmar, uh, Belarus, probably here. Laos, which is next to Cambodia. Libya, which is in Africa in the north. And Iran, which is west of Iraq and east of Afghanistan and Pakistan, right here in the Middle East. And a lot of those regimes tend to be repressive of political rights as well, because they're more interested in control and freedom. All right. And when it really started, it was socialism and really extreme socialism, communism. Socialism is a social and political philosophy that believes in using democratic means to distribute wealth evenly in a society. So, equal throughout the society. Let's go ahead and click out of that and start writing in socialism. How can you use democratic means to distribute wealth evenly in society? Well, you can make sure people that are really needy get what they need. And that's how you do it. So you have welfare programs for the really poor, old, disabled, blind, like we have. Those are socialistic measures. That doesn't mean we're entirely socialist. It means we have socialist measures within our mixed economy. Communism is an extreme version of socialism. It's an economic and political system that features a centrally planned economy with all political power and economic power in the hands of the government. Everything goes to the government, all of it. That's it. And here you have a visual of socialism trying to hold off Bolshevism, which is communism, for a free Europe. Looks like French socialism is trying to keep communism away. Red is the typical color of communism, and it's showing you you'll be enchained if you allow socialism or extreme socialism, at least communism. Communism really is just extreme socialism. The icon above is the symbol that you will see on the flag of the Soviet Union, the hammer symbolizing workers, the blacksmith would use a hammer, and the sickle symbolizing the peasants or the farmers, which was added to the Soviet version of communism. Because originally communism was for industrial workers, so Soviets didn't have a lot of industrial workers, but they did have a lot of peasants, so they adapted it. But they had some. So anyway, hopefully you can think through this answer. try to answer it, and then hear what I have to say. Is China is a communist nation? That's true, but does it fit our definition of communism? Why or why not? What problems would you predict are ahead for China? Go ahead and pause, try to answer, and then listen to what I have to say. So here's what I would say. You got the definition of communism right above, and you got China, right? The issue is the all political and economic power in the hands of the government. Currently in China, some economic power is in corporate hands, meaning the business have some legit power and legit freedom. Why? To, to increase productivity and competitiveness of China's economy. They've opened things up. What problems would I predict ahead? Well, here's the thing: once you allow some freedoms, when you start allowing economic freedoms, there becomes a growing and increasing demand for political freedom. So I would predict that eventually, I don't know when, I don't know if it's 5 years, 15 years, 20 years, that revolution for political reform will grow from economic freedoms. Maybe it doesn't happen, but I'd say China's already facing that. They're getting protesters for the first time ever. And so it makes me think my theory is probably true. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And I'm going to go ahead and scroll it over. Whenever you get an issue of not liking the way something looks, just move it. Because you want to be able to look through these notes quickly and easily, and it's important that it looks nice. Soviet agriculture, they had these large farms known as collectives, and these are government run farms. They weren't very successful because when people didn't have individual motive, they didn't produce as much as when they did. So, to a large degree, communism fails in farming. However, in industry, Soviet planners favored um, the heavy industry, and so they really started producing more steel, machinery. They had a lot of steel, and they grew quickly, and to a large degree, the steel industry was a major success under communism. But for the Soviet consumers, they didn't get the highest quality goods, and the goods they did have were limited. Wasn't enough cars. The radios and TVs weren't what they would be in the West. So you get this poor quality and a lack of materials people wanted. And so, eventually people get frustrated because, people like nice things and they weren't getting nice things. Here you have a tank. You see all these people flying under the communist banner and everything looking heroic, but there's probably also some frustration here. Here you probably have the picture above. You probably have some Soviet farmers that were frustrated with collective effort and missing their individual power when they were the kulaks and small farms. Anyway, the big problem with centrally planned economies, you don't get the best goods, and some of the goods that people want, there's shortages. Let's go ahead and write that in. You get a poor quality of good, and the goods that they did have weren't the best, and so the goods that they would be shortage. Some things there was always plentiful in the Soviet Union. They always had cigarettes, vodka, and this really thick black bread because they're pretty good at growing wheat in the Ukraine. But they almost never had the high end products that people wanted at times. Like in the '80s, a pair of $30 to $50 jeans be selling on the black market in Soviet Union for in the 150 to I don't know 200, maybe even $300 range. It was a ridiculous markup. Today, there's not that many true centrally planned economies, but there's ones that tend to it. Cuba and North Korea would probably be some of the closest examples true communist nations. Um, and typically in those societies, citizens would face a lower standard of living, like don't have the high end products or conveniences in other places. But other countries would probably fall in the centrally planned as well. I think like Venezuela would be another example where there's a lot of repression and a lack of freedom. And what you'll see is um, the social measures aren't what they are in more free countries. You'll have more pollution. And when you go to these stores, you know how our stores are full and you got all these myriad choices? When you go to the store, you got like one choice or one choice or one choice. And if you get to the store at the wrong time, you got no choice. The shelves empty. So it's pretty not good and frustrating, I would imagine, to be a consumer in one of those communities because that's not what you want to see when you go to the store. A bunch of empty shelves. All right. This part will cover 2.4. It's going to cover mixed economies. And they have advantages and drawbacks. Here you see sometimes the prices go up, like soaring wheat prices. Sometimes people freak out on on, I don't know what that is. Is that the stock market? People buying and selling. But usually, unlike the other picture, you have stores that are full and people do some shopping. And I don't know what store this is, but it looks like there's plenty of goods there, unlike the other photo. All right, go ahead and add into your notes on slide 12 the word drawbacks. Laissez faire. Laissez faire is the doctrine that government should generally not interfere in the marketplace. Laissez faire literally in French translates to let it be. At least that's what I understand it to be. I don't speak French, so I'm not 1,000% sure, but that's what I've been told. Anyway, it means leave the economy alone. Government should stay the heck out, I guess. Let's keep it clean in here. Thank you. Uh, anyway, private property should be a general thrust of laws if you're in a laissez faire economy, and really enforcing contracts. Because if you stay out of it, but you enforce contracts, generally it'll promote growth in business. Because people need to be able to trust that the laws on the books are going to be enforced and agreements that are entered into will be supported. Because they're relying on that to conduct their business. It also encourages people to come up with new ideas because you have patent laws. And so if you create something great, like the cotton gin, like bifocals, like, I don't know, Windows, like Macintosh, like the iPhone, you're going to make a bunch of money off of it because people are not supposed to copy it without giving you payment. The government also protects intellectual property, meaning ideas. If you write a book, if you write a song, if you get these things movie, once you get um, copyright protection, then if anyone makes it or resells it, they have to give you the profits. And actually, usually you have to give them permission while the copyright is in effect. Similar with songs, movies, whatnot. Okay, here you have. Let's take a quick look at the visuals here. Someone is signing a contract. It's a joke. Someone's trying to get a contract for a patent, but it's for a computer, but it's kind of too late to get a computer patent because it's already in the market. So the patent officer is like, I don't know, but the person's smiling because they really want that because they know they make a lot of money. I don't know if that's supposed to be a video game or what. Maybe that's a joystick. Anyway, someone's taking their stuff down to the patent office, trying to get a patent so they can make a lot of money and protect their ideas. All right, in a mixed economy, the government will purchase land, labor, and capital. They may. They don't always, but they may. In the households in the factor market, and sometimes from the firms, and they could push as goods and services in the product market. And we'll look at the flow chart to look at that after we fill in the notes. The government doesn't always, but it may, and often does make these purchases on many things, but not everything. because government is not pervasive. The government participates, though, meaning they're not everywhere, but they're part of it. And sometimes a bigger part, sometimes not such a big part. All right, let's look at the circular flow diagram and see if we can figure it out. What we're looking at. Here you're going to see an addition. Before we just had the households and firms. Now we've added the government into the mix. So it's not, so money would come into the firms as they would make purchases. But now you got money from households going towards taxes. You also have money from firms paying taxes going back to the government. And uh, you're also getting a physical flow. Well, where the products that the firms are making, the government is buying. Whether you're talking about mass or garbage bags or Chromebooks, whatever the government needs, some company is producing it and it's a product that gets out there. Likewise, the households are helping produce it through the firms because they work at the firms. And so you get this whole loop. All right, let's look at a cartoon that shows some of this. Hey, boss, what's it called when the majority rules? Boss says, democracy, of course. And then things get a little darker at the meeting. He goes, what's it called when the minority rules? He goes, free enterprise, because the rich people rule. And capitalism, of course. So you might think it's democratic and free, but if rich people have all the power, how free is it? That funny point made by this cartoonist. All right, comparing mixed economies. Free enterprise is the economic system that allows the conduct of business with minimal government involvement. In other words, free enterprise supports laissez-faire. It supports the government staying out of business operations. I would go ahead and put this on the next one. Me, it is me, so I'm doing that. The degree of involvement varies across many nations. The whole spectrum and continuum of involvement. Some countries have relatively little to no government involvement in business operations. Some countries have relatively high government involvement in business operation. You would call this the continuum. I'm going to show you a continuum of mixed economies. And really, it's, well, where does China lie in the continuum? Where does the United States lie in the continuum? Um, but mostly, China left the totally centrally planned economy, and they did it by privatizing these state firms. So I have a website I want to take a look at. If you click on this with it in view mode, click, you'll get these country rankings of who is the most economically free, who is the least economically free, according to these country rankings of this author. I don't know what their protocols were, but it's kind of interesting. Singapore, New Zealand, Australia, Switzerland, Ireland, among the most economically free based on these indicators that they used. Canada is in the top 10. Ninth freest. Who else is? United Kingdom is 7. Okay, Taiwan's up there. America's all at the way down to 20, but that's still pretty high because there's like 200 nations in the world, so they're in the top 10%. A bunch of these countries in the middle. It's interesting that Vietnam is pretty free, even though they're communist. They're still considered right in the middle. Well, to the bottom of the middle, but definitely not near the bottom. You got all these other countries with less freedom, including China's got to be on here somewhere. China, where are you, China? Repressed. They're not in the repressed group. They are here, 107. They got quite a bit of freedom, even though they're nominally communist, because they've opened things up to expand business. These ones are totally repressed. North Korea, pretty much no freedom. Venezuela, Cuba are the ones I mentioned, at least, but Sudan's down there, Zimbabwe, Eritrea, and in most of these places, politically, they're less free too. Not even getting rankings because they're not let in to check their indicators. Iraq, Libya, Liechtenstein, Somalia, Syria, Yemen. You can bet dying to donuts if they were let in and looking at the numbers, they'd be somewhere in here or at best in here. Okay. But if you're curious about one, let's say you're curious about Cuba, you get a look inside the numbers, click this, and it'll tell you more about, well, where are they the least? Oh, property rights, they're the least. Everyone can say, oh, tax burden, they're a little higher. Trade freedom, pretty good, but maybe so you can get your Cuban cigars, and you can have some monetary freedom, but business labor freedom, no, no, not even a little. Judicial effectiveness, nay, no thanks, not there at least. Let's see what happens if we look somewhere else. Let's look at China's. China was 100 and something. Let's take a look. Oh, see, much higher, especially over here on business labor freedom because they're trying to encourage enterprise. But on investment and financial freedom, not so much. So there is some indicators of a lack of freedom in some areas. Let's look at America, and then we'll look at some of the top ones, just to kind of peruse things. America, pretty high up there on the left, but on fiscal health, kind of low. People are a little concerned about America. I am too. What's happening right now? You got a lot of people in the stock market and you got inflation. Typically, what that happens is the market will crash at some point because people are going to think things are overvalued because of inflation. They're going to be right, and inflation's going to drop, and then you're going to get a recession and a depression. And oh my goodness. So, all these indicators that we're in a bubble are present. And so, the fiscal health is really the big one. And another issue on fiscal health is the budget deficit, which is huge and a concern. Typically, countries that are doing well economically don't run such a big debt. Singapore is number one by a significant margin, so let's just look at that one. Across the board, lots of freedom, and their fiscal health score is way higher. They're considered free in every category, and they're doing great. Sounds like if you want a place where money is thriving, that's your spot. All right, that's enough for looking at that. Well, let's look forward. So if you look at this continuum, China is moving more and more towards privatization of state firms, meaning there's these corporate takeovers where profit is going to motivate decision making. And here you have America and the United Kingdom towards the free market, and you got Iran, North Korea, Cuba towards the centrally planned, China, Russia kind of in that general direction, but Singapore pretty much leading the way. Hong Kong is noted for its freedom too. Okay, anything left to write in? Privatizing state firms. Did I get the right one? Yes. Continuum. Yes. Let's move on to the quizzes, and we'll call it a lecture. Okay, how are centrally planned economies organized? Well, centrally planned economies are organized with all government control over production, over the three questions: what is produced, how much is produced, who production is for, consumers. Which consumers are they targeting? Let's take a look. Did I get it? Did I not get it? I like my chances, but you never know. All right, let's look. They own both land and capital, land, labor, and capital. What to produce, how much to produce, how much to charge. I think that nailed it. What problems exist within centrally planned economies? This is what I would write if I were you. This one I'm not going to type though. I would write the problems that exist within centrally planned economies are, and I would do make sure I had these words in there. You want to do that? Shortages, poor quality of goods, lower standard of living. If you get three things, you're good. Role of government in mixed economy. See how I always put the words in from the question? Are to protect private property, force contracts, support patents, and intellectual property. I think that's it. Let's check two and three further in the notes. And if this ever goes too fast for you, you can always pause. The role of government is in better worded. All right, let's look at the centrally planned economies. These are some of the drawbacks. You don't need them all. Sure, just diminishing production. Eventually, you'll get that because things are going on well. Market economies protect private property, patent laws, intellectual property. Good enough for me. Could I have mentioned land, labor, capital? Sure. Do I need to mention both? No. What is free enterprise? Free enterprise is minimal government involvement in the economy. Free enterprise is minimal government involvement in the economy. When you're done, let me know if I did okay or not. I don't care if you write a note somehow, some way. Communicate with me. You can put it on the stream, send me an email, you can write me a post it. I don't care. But I hope you understood this well. I hope I explained it well. But that concludes 2.3 and 2.4 Centrally Planned and Mixed Economies lecture. Peace, peace, peace.